Hi guys, today we're going to create a fantastic car animation in Blender in just 20 minutes using only free assets and free software. This one's special because our car will be using real world physics to simulate collisions and a car jump. We're going to cover car rigging, where to get free models, sculpting, using multiple cameras and loads more pro tips. If you hang on to the end, I've got a great tip for you which shows you how to add real slow motion to your renders. Let's get started. Okay, here we are back in Blender. Press A to select everything, X to delete everything. Press N to pull up your sidebar. And if you just click on where it says Blender Kit, if you haven't got Blender Kit installed, I'll put a link in the description below. Let's just pop this down. Search filters, put free first. And then categories, we're going to go for transport, cars, and type in Porsche. And you should get this nice sort of bluey purple Porsche come up here. Just click and drag this down here. Now the main reason I've chosen this car above every other is if you toggle this arrow down, it's already been sorted into a body and 4 separate wheels. And that's going to make things a lot easier going forward. Now just one thing I noticed, the rotation on this particular wheel is not quite right, so let's just set that to 90, 0, minus 90. And on the other side, this wheel actually is also just slightly off vertical, so that's going to basically, if we don't sort that out, the wheel's going to wobble from side to side. Set that Y to 0, set this to 90, and that one to minus 90. Oh, that's not worked, has it? So what we'll do instead, if you just press Control and 3 on your number pad, select your back wheel, press X to delete it, click on the front wheel, press Shift and D to duplicate it, then press Y on the keyboard and just move that back into the position. Okay, that should set all wheels nice and square. So if we press 1 on the number pad, we can see that they all look nice and square. Right, so now we've basically got the car separated into 5 different parts. So what we'll do, we've also got an empty, which we don't need. So we're going to select all of those parts here. So hold down Shift and click. And then we're going to press Alt P and clear the parent and keep the transformation. And now we can click on the empty and just press X to delete it. Okay, so now in the Porsche folder, we should have the body on all the wheels. Okay, now install the RBC add-on. This add-on is actually really good. It's physics based, so it allows us to do things that Rig a Car doesn't do, such as have the car go over jumps, which is what we're going to do today. Also allows it to crash into things. It's really nice add-on. They've also made a nice free version of it with some limited functionality, but it's going to be enough to get us through this tutorial, so install that one now. So start by clicking Add Rig. And then basically we have to assign each part of the car body to it. So click on the car body and click Vehicle Body. So if you imagine the car's like this, so the front left wheel is this one, the back left wheel is this one, the front right wheel is this one, and then finally the back right wheel. So once we've got all of those 5 things assigned, we can click Generate Rig. And this actually makes a rig around the car body. Also, this sort of, it makes a collision rig as well. So you can see this kind of mesh that's going over the top of the car. That's going to be the collision rig. That's going to be really handy for when we're crashing into things. Okay, let's save the work. Right, let's give you a quick demo of this rig. So if you press play down there, you can actually start controlling the car. So click on where it says controls. And if you click on drive, you can actually see the car going forward and going backwards. So this kind of sets the speed of the car. And actually they've actually put a nice camera rig in here. Let's just do this. So if you click on the follow camera, click on the little green icon there, and then press 0 on your number pad, you can actually see the car and the camera will follow it automatically. So what we can also do is use the steering control to steer the car, and obviously steer left and right. And if you want to see it without this sort of mesh over it, just where it says rig, you can just click the eyeball and that clears the mesh. So you can also control other parameters like the tuning. You can kind of change the suspension and the physics of the car, how much friction you want to have with the wheels and stuff. And actually in the full version of this, you can actually control the car with an Xbox controller or the keyboard, which is really fun. And you can also draw a path for the car to follow. But for now, we can stick with the basic free version. So go to the start of your animation. What we'll do, we'll type 0 here, and we'll press I to insert a keyframe. That's the speed at 0 to start. And at say 50 frames in, let's set the speed to 50 and press I to set a keyframe there. So now the car, you can see if you watch these numbers up here, you can see the numbers will go from 0 to 50. So if we press play, you can actually see the car accelerate up. When it gets to the edge of the world, it falls off. So this really demonstrates the nice physics-based workflow of this add-on. Right, the next thing we're going to do, so RBC automatic adds kind of a surface in, a world surface down here, where it says RBC ground, and that basically gives a collision for the car wheels to stick to, like a road. So what we can actually do, let's add our own road in now. So Shift and right click on the floor, Shift and A to add a plane. Right, we're going to press S to scale it up a bit, and then I think what we'll do, we'll scale it down the Y-axis. So press S and then Y, scale it so we've got a nice sort of long road. What we'll do, if you press Control and A, and then we'll apply all the transforms. So now if we press play, you'll actually see the car comes along the road. Okay, an interesting thing about this, because it is physics-based, you sometimes get some slight anomalies. So sometimes one wheel might have slightly more traction than the other and it'll veer off in a different direction. So what we'll do, we'll set the road to be a bit wider, S to scale, X to scale it wider, and then Control A to apply all transforms. And then to stop the car falling off the edge of this plane, we need to make this physics-based. So here where it says collisions, set the road to be a passive collision. That basically means the road and the car will interact, but this won't just fall down due to the effects of gravity. Okay. The other thing we're going to change is the collision target. So normally Blender sort of draws an invisible mesh around the actual object, so it can work out the collisions. And it does that with this shape called a convex hull, which is quite a simple shape. If you click the eyeball, you can actually see the shape of the mesh. Now the problem with this is if we tab into edit mode, press Ctrl R to add some loop cuts. Let's add a few in here. Okay. And now if we select one of them, so press 2 on your keyboard, select this one, and press G to grab and Z to move in the Z axis. In fact, what we'll do, let's have proportional editing on. So click that one on. You can also, shortcut key is O. Press G to grab and Z to move in the Z axis, and then just scroll your mouse wheel to make that bigger. Let's make it into a ramp. Now what happens is if we run the animation again, you'll watch the Porsche and it actually isn't touching the road at all. It's touching actually it's doing something crazy, but actually it's following this mesh that basically Blender automatically draws around the shape. We don't want this to be the collision, we actually want the collision to be the mesh. So change it from convex hull to mesh. You'll see the car actually stays on the road. I think maybe it's going too fast. What we can do, let's just increase the friction in the tyres. So go to tuning, go to wheels, oh no, physics. Let's increase the tyre friction to 3. Oh, look at that. The car is now jumping. When you're trying to actually watch this, Blender will sometimes get confused with the cache. So what we need to do is actually record the animation in the cache. So if you click record cache here and then press play, let's watch this car go by again. Whee. And then actually, when you've got playback controls now, you can actually scrub through the playback without any playback issues. The cache is always recorded. Okay, so a couple of things we can do. Obviously we can extend the road So G to grab, Y to move in the Y direction, and let's just extend that road out a little bit. So once you make any changes to the mesh, you're going to need to delete your cache, press record again and play it again. Actually, what we need to do is press Ctrl A, apply all the transforms, record the cache, play it again. So what we could do now, we could also add some more loop cuts to this. It doesn't matter quite how many, I'm kind of just eyeballing it so they look roughly square. We'll get rid of the RBC ground so we don't see that. And let's just add a few little lumps and bumps on this road. So let's shade that smooth for a start, shade auto smooth. And let's go into sculpt mode. Go to inflate. Can we actually see anything happening? Let's increase the strength up a bit. Okay, it's subtle. Oh, it's not subtle. We're kind of doing quite a lot here. Right, maybe set this to subtract effect. Let's get the radius a bit bigger as well. Let's just do a little bit of roughness on the road just to get a bit more of those physics working. So you can see the car's wheels bumping up and down a little bit, make the road a bit rougher. Don't forget to delete your cache. Go back into object mode. Let's do Ctrl A, apply all the transforms and record the cache again. We see the car's now bumping along the road, jumping nicely. So we've also got a chase camera. Let's click on the green icon to make that active, and you can watch the car from this angle instead. And really now it's just a case of dressing the whole set to make it look something a bit more interesting. So hop back into BlenderKit. Let's get some lighting first on this scene now. So we're going to add a HDRI, search filters, just toggle free first if they don't appear. This one here, binary sunset with cloud sky dome. We'll just drag and drop it there and just click OK to add it to the scene. Click on the viewport shading to see that. Yeah, I think that could look quite nice. So if you ever want to rotate this HDRI, just go to click on the world settings. Just click the little arrow next to where it says color, and then click the other little arrow next to where it says vector. You can actually rotate it on the Z axis. So let's just try rotating it by 90 degrees. I kind of want the light really to be more on the side of the car rather than the front of the car. So 180 degrees, you see how it just completely transforms the look of the shot. Next thing I'm going to do, well, let's add some trees in behind in the background. So go back to models, type in forest, and if you see here this one here called low poly tree with random season, just drag and drop it down there. What we're going to do, we're going to tweak this, so basically we're going to have trees all running along the side of the road here. So 7 to go into top view, just grab this, and what we're going to do is just scale it, S to scale, Y to drag it out along the Y axis, and that gives us trees all along the side of the road. You can actually control the number of trees by going to this particle setting here, changing where it says number. So let's have a few more trees. So now if we kind of just looking, let's just drag the trees down. So G, grab to, and G to grab and Z to move on the Z axis. And that just gives us some nice trees in the background. We're also, I think what we'll do, see this material on the floor? It's called ground. Click on your road. And let's just set this to ground as well. Just scroll down till you see ground. That blends this all together much better. Right, now you can either stick with Eevee for this, or let's just have a quick look. If you are going to stick with Eevee, click on ambient inclusion, bloom, screen space reflections, maybe not bloom, maybe too much, and motion blur. But I'm going to hop into cycles because I prefer the way it looks, and I've got a nice fast PC that handles it okay. So click on GPU compute. Click on max samples in the viewport, 16 should be fine, and 32 to render should be fine. And also click on motion blur. So with the chase camera selected, just press G to grab and just drag it. Let's just drag it around to the side a bit more. And maybe move it down a little bit as well. You can do this with the item if that's easier. It is on this case. Alright, I'm just going to watch this through. I think my general sense is this ground is just a bit too bumpy. So maybe the car is going a bit too fast. Let's just slow the car down a bit. So go back to controls and go back to frame 50 where I set the speed to 50. Let's set this to 30. Press I, delete the cache, and we're going to record the cache again. Okay, 30 is a bit too slow. Let's set it to 40. Now just to make this a bit more interesting, I'm just going to add a couple of buildings in as well, just to make it a bit more fun. So Blender Kit, going to click on building. Let's get rid of the tree. That's it. It doesn't matter which one you choose really. Well, these are quite nice. These ones are called Modern House. I'm just going to drag, let's just drag one of them on. Down there. Just grab it forward a little bit. G to grab. So right click on Modern House, click Select Hierarchy, press Shift and D, and then press Y, or we'll duplicate a few of these. So we've got something to look at in the background, and maybe one more, Shift and D. Let's just move it across here. Back into rendered view. Now with the chase camera selected, click on the camera icon. Let's just make this a bit wider, maybe a 30mm focal length. And just click on item. Let's just get a bit closer to the car. So just reduce these numbers a bit close to the ground. Maybe we'll come around the front a bit, so just change the Y. So let's get the animation started somewhere around there. Right, we'll do I on the location there. Let's just get the car moving forward a bit. I think as the car is moving, let's come around to the front a bit. So let's change the Y, increase the Y up a little bit. Maybe change the X a little bit. Maybe come down a bit close to the ground, get that feeling of speed. Then press I again for location. Come forward a bit more. As we approach the ramp, we need to be going up, so let's increase the Z axis. Or we could come around to the side. Seems quite steep, that ramp, doesn't it? Let's put a location keyframe in for the camera there. I'm just going to tweak this ground a bit. Tab into edit mode. Hold down the Alt key and select this whole line. So you make sure you got your line, your edge select mode there. Press G to grab it up and move it up on the Z a little bit. Just roll your cursor in if you've got. I just want to kind of try and smooth this out a bit. G to grab Z to move up on the Z axis. Let's just try and get this whole line smoothed out a bit. So just select your line, press G to grab, Z to move up on the Z. That's it. Let's just smooth it out a little bit. Control A, apply all your transforms, delete your cache, and record it again. Let's render one of those frames, just have a quick look. Okay, that's looking quite a nice feeling of speed there. Maybe we just need to add some things for it to smash into as well. Let's add a couple of cones in. So just look for the car, where the car is. Frame, it's 180 for me, might be slightly different for you. Shift and right click there, go to Blender Kit, let's search for a cone. Let's drag these three and pop them in front of the car. And what we're going to do, if you go back to RBC, select that, set it to active collision, click on the cone, select active collision, right, delete the cache, record the cache again. Okay, that hasn't worked at all. Let's go back to that mode. Go back to the start. I think the cones are just slightly intersecting with the floor. So click on there, empty, press G to grab, move up on the Z axis. Delete the cache. Let's record that again. Okay, one of the cones is already falling down. You can see it just bashes the cones out of the way. That looks cool. Right, let's render that out and see how it looks. So you want to set your file format to FFmpeg video. Encoding can be MPEG 4. Output quality can be perceptually lossless. And find a place on your computer to save it. To speed up your animation, if you just search for persistent data, and make sure that's clicked on, that saves it from reloading everything every time. Now, if you just go to your file, edit, render, click render animation, and off we go. That looks great. Now, if we just add in another camera, so Shift A, add in a camera, Control and 0 to make that camera active, view, navigation, walk navigation. Now you can use W, A, S and D to move the camera around. Let's just move the camera to about there, and we'll get some nice slow motion footage using a clever trick I'm going to teach you now. So really we want this bit to kind of just be in slow motion. So instead of being as fast as that, let's slow it right down. So if you go to your scene tab, where it says time stretching, just type in 300 where it says new. This will basically extend the footage. It'll basically add 3 times as many frames. So when we watch the motion, play it from here, it slows it right down. So we can actually just render the animation again and see that nicely slowed down. Let's do that. Okay, so I spent a few more hours on the scene. As you can see, I've made it just a little bit bigger. I've added some more houses and some trees to the side. If we zoom into the car, you can actually see I've added a little person, a little man to sit inside the car. I've actually added also in some different camera angles. So when we play the animation through now, we kind of go from this sort of first angle, swap to an angle where we see him going through the cones, and then swap to another angle to watch the jump at the end. To add another camera angle, it's really simple. Just go to the place in the timeline where you want to swap cameras, just add a marker, and then choose the camera you want just by clicking on it, and then go to bind camera to markers, and that actually will swap the camera at that place in the timeline to the different camera. I'll render it now and add some sound from artlist.io. They've got really great engine sounds there. That's really helpful. And you can take a look, see what you think.